Happy Friday, my friends. We are reading chapter, is this 8 today? 1, 2, doesn't even know. 3, 4, I think it's chapter 8. They're not labeled, it just has the name of the person in it. Today's chapter is called, it's about the character named Sae Young. I know that you pronounce it Sae Young because she is Korean, and this character is Korean, and I have a friend who speaks Korean, so I asked her how you would say this name, and she said Sae Young, so now you know, because it's a different, vowel combination than we usually have in English. It's S-A-E, so that's why. Natalia, welcome. So, before I get to reading this actual chapter, I want to discuss with you why I feel frustrated by this chapter, and why, the author, Paul Fleischman, did this thing that frustrates me. So, what frustrates me is that Paul Fleischman attempted to write this chapter, in broken English. So broken English is what English sounds like if, you're not, so it's like Miss Albino speaks broken Spanish, right? My Spanish is okay, it's decent, I can communicate, I don't always get the verb endings right, I don't always get the plurals and singulars right, it's just it's not perfect Spanish, it's broken Spanish. So some people who learn English as a second language, speak broken English. Paul Fleischman tried to represent that in writing this chapter. He did a terrible job. As I studied how languages work in my master's degree, and there are specific things that broken English has in common. All people who speak broken English forget, they make certain mistakes that are typical of broken English. They also make different mistakes, but it tends to be the same mistakes over and over again. Exactly, Shay, putting it into Google Translate, yes. So Paul Fleischman attempted to write this in broken English, but he didn't do the research to actually correctly represent that broken English, so he just sounds like he's being a big jerk, kind of, and making fun of people who don't speak good English. And I find that, I don't want to say offensive, but I find it disappointing, I think, that an author whose book is published, the author, the editor, nobody thought to look this up or change anything about it. It just seems like he's instead of making this character more real, he's making this character kind of like a joke. It's just the same way, if you put on a fake accent from a different culture, that's kind of offensive. And so, anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox really shortly, friends. But that's how I feel about the way Paul Fleischman wrote this chapter. I don't like it. I don't think it was well done, and it makes me feel disappointed in him as an author that he didn't do a better job with this. So, that being said, I'm actually not going to read it to you verbatim. I will read you a few sentences of what he wrote, but other than that, I'm just going to, sort of summarize what happens, because it actually pains me to read this chapter the way it is. So, anyway, now you know. So here are a few sentences of the, broken English that he tries to represent. So here's Sae Young. Always many people in my house when I was young. 5 sisters, many friends. I always like being with people. Then I leave Korea with my husband to come to America for work. Now, I'm not going to do this for the whole chapter, I promise, but some things that he does wrong here are people who are still learning English don't always grasp pronouns. So they would say, lots of people in house. They wouldn't say my house. They're not thinking that deeply. They often forget the S's in plurals. So they wouldn't say 5 sisters. They would probably say 5 sister. They wouldn't use words like many. They wouldn't use verb conjugations like I always like being with people. Anyway, I'm going to let it go. I just wanted to convince you that I knew what I was talking about and dig into that a little bit with you if you were interested. It's really hard for me. And if I didn't know what I know, it probably wouldn't bother me, but I happen to have this weird expertise about how language works. So anyway, here we are. So I'm going to just read this and sort of, like, translate it in my mind to be, like, real English. I'll probably make a few mistakes because it's a little bit, like, a weird thing to do. But Sae Young does have a very interesting story, which we will now get to. Okay. There were always many people in my house when I was young. I had 5 sisters, and I had many friends. I always liked being with people. Then I left Korea with my husband to come to America for work. So both she and her husband are from Korea, and they're immigrants to America. We bought a dry cleaning shop and lived on the next block. A dry cleaning shop is better than a restaurant. You don't have to speak English too much, and you only work 6 days. We worked together, 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. At night, I sewed alterations. We saved it all for our children's college so they could have an easier life. But no children came. We hoped for many years, but we were still alone. Then my husband died of a heart attack. He was 37 years old. Now I was all alone, except for my friends. I hired a woman to work in the shop. One afternoon, when she was gone, a man walked into the shop with a coat to clean. Under the coat, he had a gun. He took out the money from the cash register and then pushed me down. He yelled at me very bad words, then kicked me until he broke my cheekbone. Then he hit me again, and my head hit hard against the wall, and I went to sleep. She didn't go to sleep, she went unconscious. When I woke up, I did not like to be with people anymore, like before. I was afraid of everyone all the time. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 months. Now, maybe we can identify with this a little bit right now, because we're not leaving our apartments, but in general, feeling so scared that you don't leave your apartment for a few months is not, it's not a fun place to be. It's not really a healthy place to be. Sometimes that happens after people go through scary events like this, traumatic events, but it's hard to make a living if you're not leaving your apartment. My neighbor bought food for me at the store. I didn't open the door if someone knocked. Even friends, I only opened the door for food. I was afraid to walk on the sidewalk with people. I hired a Korean man to run the dry cleaning shop. I never went in. That happened 2 years ago. Very slowly, I got better. So this all happened 2 years ago. She spent 2 months living inside her house and just like being scared, and then she sort of slowly started to branch out. Very slowly, I got better. I went to the store to buy my food, but I went very fast. Then I went not as fast. I was very lonely, but I was still afraid. Then I passed by the garden. A Vietnamese girl was working there, picking beautiful lima beans. A man and a woman were on the other side, talking over a row of corn. I heard the man say his wife gave him a hoe for his birthday. I want to be with people again. Next day, I went back and dug a small garden. So this is actually like a really good way for her to be with people without actually having to sort of interact with people. So she's doing a great job of like getting herself out there, like out of her comfort zone, but still staying like in a place that feels safe to her. Nobody talked to me that day, but just to be near people, nice people, felt good, like being next to the fire in winter. Here's another simile. It felt good, like being next to the fire in winter. It was very hot and humid in July. Most people came early in the evening after work when the air was cool. People were watering and pulling weeds. Even if I didn't talk to anyone, the sound of people working was almost like conversation all around. People visited friends, I listened to their voices, and I felt very safe. Then, a man walked over and asked about peppers. I'm growing hot peppers like I did in Korea. That was the first time that someone talked to me. I was so glad. I had trouble talking. All right, ready for who this is? We're going to find out who this is. So, I'm sorry, once again, I lied to you at the beginning of the book. I never mean to lie, but I always sort of like lie by accident. I told you at the beginning of the book that we don't hear from any characters in other people's chapters other than Wendell and Anna, but here's one. That man was named Sam. He's an American man and talked to everyone. He was very smart. When people complained all the time about carrying water, he started a contest. So now we get to hear about the contest. He said that adults couldn't solve the problem, so we should let children try. He said he would give $20 to a child under 12 who had the best idea. He wrote this on paper and nailed that paper to a post close to the sidewalk. I love that. I think a failing that many adults have is not taking children seriously enough, children and teenagers. I think that adults are so bogged down in responsibility that we don't use our brains for exciting and innovative stuff, but you all are very good at that because you have big, beautiful brains that you're learning how to use, and you don't have to pay bills or I don't know, what are other things that adults have to do that are terrible? Work at jobs. I don't know. Anyway, so I do like that Sam makes this contest specifically for young people. We could talk a little bit more about Sam. Maybe. I'm starting to change my mind about him. I hate him a little bit less. The contest lasted 1 week. Kids came out of school, walked around, saw the paper, and told their friends. On Saturday, everyone brought their plans. Sam had a wooden box and let each one stand on it and tell their idea to the others. Hey, Bobby. One girl lived in an apartment by the garden. She said she would open the window and people would give her containers, which she would then fill up with water. Then her mother interrupted and said the water bill would be way too much. One boy says to use water from the fire hydrant. Another said to run a hose from Lake Erie. There were many ideas. Sam explained how much money each one cost. Then a little black girl said to let rain from the spouts go into garbage cans. Everyone looked. 3 different spouts on the walls of the buildings around. There were 3 different spouts on the walls of the buildings around the garden. Remember, at one point they mentioned that the garden is surrounded by 3 buildings, or it's surrounded on 3 sides. So there are 3 different buildings that have gutters essentially that come down. And gutters, of course, collect rain. You would just have to take off the bottom part of the spout. Sam gave the girl $20. Of course, rainwater costs what? Literally nothing, right? So this is a great solution. Everyone clapped. Other people gave money to buy garbage cans. The next day, there was a thunderstorm. The cans were almost full. That little girl was there, very proud. Someone brought 3 old pots to scoop water out of the cans. It was hard to pour into narrow containers. I went quickly to the store and bought 3 funnels to make it much easier to fill the containers. I put 1 by each garbage can. That day, I see a man use my funnel, then a woman, then many people. I felt very glad inside. I felt like part of the garden, almost like family. So, as much as I have a problem with the way this chapter is written, it's a nice story. Shay, I want to address your question. So, luckily my mother is a gardening expert. I don't think that she thinks that she's an expert, but as far as I'm concerned, she's an expert. So, Ms. Kerner, maybe you can respond to Shay's comment and say if that would be an issue or not while I keep talking about the book. So, something I love... Oh, and so Hadley, if he had nailed the poster against the post, it could be pre-internet. Yes, so we're zeroing in on when this is, right? Post-Nixon, pre-internet. We're getting there. That's good thinking as a historical marker. I like that. So this chapter is pretty sweet. I mean, it's a little bit violent in the beginning, right, when that scary thing happens to Sae Young. But what's really nice is that the garden now is this... I want you to write in the comment box what it does for Sae Young. How does the garden help her? People still do that. Is the girl who came up with the water idea in another chapter? That's a great question. A little black girl. No, I don't think so, Abby, but I'm going to double check in case I'm forgetting. I don't know that we hear from anybody who's the right age to be that little black girl, because Sam says that his contest is for people under 12. And I don't know, even Gonzalo is in 8th grade. Virgil, it could have been Virgil, except Virgil's a boy. Right? I think. Great question. I will have to do some research on that. Leona's old, isn't she? Leona's old enough to have kids in high school. Sorry. Ooh. I'm trying to get this question. Okay. Hadley says, if you guys use the question thing at the bottom, I can throw it up on the screen. When the book was published, the internet was just getting popular for people. Could the book take place in 1994? How do you know, Hadley, that the book was just getting popular for people? Like, based on what? Do we hear about the internet in the book? Miss Kerner says, yes, the rain will wash some dirt out, but that dirt, leaves, etc. will drop in the bottom of the barrel. Oh, and so since we're taking water from the top of the barrel, right, because it's like it'll settle out and we'll take water from up here and all the dirt will be down here. Makes sense. We have some of these barrels. My parents have some of these barrels at their house, so something else that makes my mother a gardening expert. You asked your dad. Okay. I don't see any reason it couldn't take place in 1994. We may find more historical markers that will help point to that, and that was certainly before the internet was popularized. I think it existed, but it wasn't like widely available. So Sae Young, just to wrap this up, my friends, Sae Young has this trauma of this man coming into her store, and she is able to sort of heal herself and feel less scared and get to the garden where she's going to start being able to talk to people and like get better from her fear of people, because of course this like scary guy came in and hurt her. And so this is another example of the garden helping somebody out, helping somebody be maybe like have something they wouldn't otherwise have. Like in Virgil, there's the lettuce idea. Sam, the idea here is that community is important, and sometimes things like community gardens can really bring people together and help people feel good about themselves and about working together in a way that other things maybe can't. The book was published in 94. My dad said it would probably be pre-94. Yes. The book was published in 94. All right. I think it's 97, Hadley. Gotta go so I don't hit 20 minutes, my friends. Drop any other questions that you might have about the chapter. Good thinking, good listening, good chatting. Seedfolks, we have 5 more chapters, so that'll take us to next Friday, and then I will start something else after that. I'll probably just keep rolling like this. I might change the time depending on how things shake out. We're starting to get like scheduled things that we need to do for school, like we teachers. So I might change the time at the end of Seedfolks moving forward, but obviously I will let you know. I will post a quiz. I need to do a Virgil quiz. I'll throw that in my stories, and I will see you all on Monday at 9:30. Have a lovely weekend. Don't do any work over the weekend.